I'm really, really happy for our final session to welcome Charlotte Harpur. She studied French and beginner's Italian at St Hilda's College from 2013 to 2017. And she's here to talk about to us about how her experience learning modern languages has shaped her career progression since then. When she left Oxford, she became a French teacher via Teach First at Weaver's Academy in Northampton. And after 2.5 years of doing that, she took what was probably a bit of a risk at the time, which has paid off clearly. And she took a leap into the world of sports journalism and joined the Athletics news desk before becoming their women's football writer. The New York Times bought The Athletic in 2023, and now The Athletic provides their sports coverage. And she also commentates for the BBC Radio 5 Live. So she's going to talk to us today about modern languages and the path that she's been on since. Could you all give a warm welcome to Charlotte Harpur?
Thanks so much, Emily, and it's a real privilege to be talking here. Helen, my former tutor, and I have just caught up, so that was a real nice moment to be back in Oxford and sharing my passion for languages and sport and education. Ultimate respect to all of you. I know how hard you work as teachers, and the most common question that I got when I was a teacher teaching from year 7 to A level was like, what's the point of learning French, miss? That I'm never going to use it. And it was such an abstract concept for my pupils. And this is why I want to start my talk, because in October 2019 at half term, I led a French trip for 20 students who had never been to France before, never left Wellingborough, didn't have a passport, didn't have a health insurance card. And I was stressing because I thought, what are we going to do when we get on this ferry and these 20 kids are just going to go all over the place? And instead they stood so close to the teachers because they hadn't been outside their comfort zone. But I saw that kind of spark when they went to France and they used their language skills. And I have spoken to them since about what I went on to do, and I had that itch for sports journalism. And so 2 years after that French trip, I was back in Paris for a very different reason. And I had only been on the Athletics news desk for just over a year. And when you're on the news desk, you very much stay in the office. So you're not out on the beat necessarily exploring stories. And the French media had reported that Kira Hamraoui, this woman here, had been beaten with an iron bar, and her teammate, Aminata Diallo, the one on the far side, was arrested in connection with the attack. And they said, right, Charlotte, off you go. Go to Paris, you speak French. And I thought, right, well, yeah, I better go and find out as a journalist what's gone on. And it was my French skills that I had to use to go and talk to the police, to go and talk to lawyers, to go and talk to footballers' agents about what on earth had happened with this story, which was, you just don't hear of it. It's such a rare, bonkers, crazy incident to have happened. But it was a very concrete example of me using my French skills. And since then, I continued to report on this story. And the BBC picked it up and wanted to do a podcast series on it. And that involved in-depth research with all of those characters involved. Aminata Diallo at the time was released without charge. She since has been charged with aggravated assault and criminal conspiracy. The case still hasn't been solved 4 years later. She denies all the accusations and she declares that she's still innocent. But we produced a BBC series, which I'm going to play you now. And my colleague Tom and I led that research. And of course, as you all know, languages are so key in building those relations with people, getting them to trust you, communicating in their native language. Some of the lawyers were very adept in English, but it's that first point of contact in their native language that really think, oh, you know, these people, A, they're making an effort, and B, they have some understanding of our culture. So I'll play that clip now.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
A warning, this episode contains language that some may find offensive.
Les gens pensent qu'elle a été hospitalisée, qu'elle pouvait plus avoir l'usage de ses jambes pendant un petit moment.
People think that she was hospitalized, that she didn't have the use of her legs for a while. I'm not taking anything away from the severity of her assault, but don't overdo it.
Je n'enlève rien à la gravité de son agression, mais il faut pas exagérer le truc.
Welcome to a very special edition of Sport's Strangest Crimes, a French football scandal. I'm Maisie Adam, and the voice you've just heard was that of an actor reading the words of former PSG footballer Aminata Diallo. And as we all now know, after 7 episodes of intrigue and accusations, betrayal and bloodshed, Diallo is waiting to stand trial in the French courts, charged with organising an attack on her teammate, Kira Hamraoui. And in this episode, we're going to hear the first-hand account from Diallo herself. Others involved in the case will have, and do have, very different views and opinions, and we'll hear some of those as we go. But this episode is Aminata Diallo's stage. Her chance to put across her side of the story, because she fiercely maintains her innocence. The question is, do you believe her? This interview was conducted in French with the Athletic's Charlotte Harpur and Tom Williams. But because it's in French, you'll hear Aminata's words voiced by an English-speaking actor. So let's get going, and let's get straight to that night, the 4th of November 2021.
So for your students, it's just a very concrete example that that interview would never have happened. Aminata, you know, didn't have the best English and wanted to do it all in French. And that was a turning point in my career and what I've pursued since. And I think we in this room think that speaking languages is quite normal. And when you go out into the workplace, they honestly think you have a superpower. And it's extraordinary because as English speakers, we are lazy and we think, oh, you know, everybody will speak English, it'll be fine. But in today's world, that human connection is still so important. And I back myself as a journalist, but at the World Cup in 2022, so I had only been at the company just over 2 years, I was sent to the World Cup in Qatar. And that was really because there was Senegal, Tunisia, Morocco, and the France national teams. And I was asked to go and report on those teams and interview fans and interview the athletes and bring that reporting home. One of the highlights was spending a match day with the 7 letters of Senegal, who didn't speak any English. And I turned up at this compound in Doha at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, you know, would I be able to get ready with your team? And they said, no, you're going to have to pay. And I was like, well, we're not paying. And they said, oh, you know, it's a very special ceremony. We don't want to kind of jinx anything. And then they said, okay, you can come with us on the bus. And it was a moment to capture that culture and that celebration and dance and music and try and bring that to life to our readership as well. I say I covered the Francophone countries, but I also covered the Women Life Freedom protest against the Iranian regime. I investigated what happened to Qatar women's national team, which had just seemed to disappear during the tournament. So yes, the opening was my languages, but around that I could explore so many different topics where I was speaking English primarily. So I'll show you a small clip as we got ready with the 12th Lion, they called themselves. So again, it was trying to bring a different story, a different kind of journalism that you wouldn't necessarily get from your kind of run-of-the-mill. And although that was a fun piece to do, the whole tournament itself, I was pushed in so many different directions. Again, major tournaments, another example. This time was in Germany at Euro 2024, and I was assigned the French men's team. This one you'll see here was me interviewing the head of Les Baroudeurs du Sport, who were a fan group, and I spent the whole day with them, integrated in them, watching from the stands and how they felt football and really their kind of passion and emotion. This one, I was on a train to Leipzig and I was doing some transcription and it was quite fuzzy and I couldn't quite hear it. And I heard these guys just chatting away in French. And I said, oh, sorry, would you mind I can't quite understand what this person's saying. And they said, yeah, sure. And we got chatting and they used to go to school with N'Golo Kanté, former France international. And again, I think as linguists, we are taught to ask questions and be curious. And with your pupils as well, it's in this day and age, you know, you have to be brave to do an oral exam and make that first step, even if you might not know someone. And my piece was then transformed because I got all his school memories because I just said hello to somebody in French on the train. This is Clément, who is now 77, I believed. He was 76 when I interviewed him, and his rooster, Balthazar. And he, if you want to Google any of this stuff, the whole article's there, but it's, he says Balthazar is immortal. And when he went to his first game as a young boy, he snuck the rooster into the stadiums. And he was like iconic at the World Cup. And he's been over 300 matches. So I think all of this, yes, French opened the doors, and there were so many stories to explore. And those doors would have just been closed had I not had my language skills. It's the little things as well. I may not... the French team, for example, would be very open to me. If you think the French press pack, you know, they have their L'équipe, RMC, Le Monde, it's their familiar faces. And again, if you make the effort to speak in their native language, that helps. Didier Deschamps, the French men's manager, hates it when he has to put his headphones in and he huffs and gruffs and there's like, oh God, I'm going to have to listen to someone speaking English. Those little things really do make a difference. And last year, the New York Times were covering the Olympics in Paris. And I said, can I go and cover the Paralympics? Again, I just think because I spoke French, they'll say, oh yeah, sure, you'll be fine. And this was the same fan group that I met at the Euros, so it was a lovely full circle moment. But I would say that I didn't speak that much French in terms of communication with athletes. But I got to ask what Parisians think about the Paralympics. Is Paris fit as a city for disabled people in general? And talk to fans about their experience as well. So sport is a way into so many different avenues. And one of the real touching moments with this iconic landscape was when France played Argentina in the blind football. And my job is to try and bring that to life to people. So I will show you a clip here, and they're banging the goal so that the striker can hear where the goal is positioned, because they cannot see. But the crowd and the tension was a memory that will last with me for a lifetime. So it was a really unique moment because you have to be silent throughout the game. And I'd never experienced that before at a football match. So the contrast from being in Germany, covering the French men's national team, to then the Paralympics and the blind football team. It was just really cool to be there. These were the other stories that I covered at the Paralympics, which I was really passionate about. Again, it was all English speaking, but I was there thanks to my language skills. Oksana Masters was affected by radiation poisoning, and when she was younger, she was an orphan in Ukraine for 7.5 years. She was abused and raped by men. She was then adopted, and she is one of the most successful Paralympians, and her story just really touched me. This is Ezra Freck, who won 2 golds at the Paralympics, and he had a countdown on his social media saying 100 days until I win Paralympic gold, 99 days, 98 days. Like, imagine putting that pressure on yourself. And he actually won gold on day 99 in the 100 meters, and then on our day 100 in the high jump. And I finished, and you have a mixed zone, which is where the athletes pass through. And him and his coach walked through the mixed zone, and they gave some really good quotes, which is great for a journalist. Lots of colour, lots of emotion. You think, brilliant. It's 11 o'clock. I might get to bed before 1 a.m. Before the next day of events continues. Bash that out. Great. And as I was leaving the stadium, I saw these people with Team Ezra on their shirts. And I thought, oh, I wonder who these people are. Said hello. They were from America, and they were Ezra's parents. And they were so, so proud of their son. Of course they were. And they could not hide their joy, and they were crying. And I just said, look, I'm so pleased for you. But they wanted to tell his story. And his mother, as it says in the introduction, gave birth to Ezra, beautiful baby boy, but his leg had to be amputated. And so those stories and the connections, again, were so vital in really digging deeper underneath the surface. They said, come on, come to the after party. We're going to a bistro. And I met their family, I met their coaches, and suddenly what I thought was just an 800-word story became into a 2,000-word of how this boy, really fought for his place in society. And his mum said, when you go into a room, Ezra, you stand up with your shoulders back and you say, I am here, I'm arrived. And yeah, again, I've been so lucky to cover these events and try and communicate and make sure that people hear about these stories as well. This is my colleague Michael Cox at The Athletic, who's a football tactics expert. If you are a football nerd, you will have to read his books because he is the best at tactical knowledge from the Premier League to all around the world. Megan Faringa, who's also my women's football colleague. And this is Euro 2025. This was actually France against Germany for the women's football. And this is where the Lionesses got back-to-back European Championship wins this summer. And so I was there as the England reporter. Again, I had an eye on France, and I would go to their press conferences and communicate in French. But I think all the previous examples that I have showed you and the experience that I built allowed me to really enjoy this tournament as well, because then when you speak in English, it's a bit easier. And even in mixed zones, which is where athletes pass through after the game, I don't speak Spanish that well. But if Aitana Bonmati, who's the best player in the world, comes in and she knows me, I'll tell her, "Tienes 2 minutos, por favor." And just that, and her head will twitch. And then we'll switch into English because I can't carry on that conversation in Spanish. But it is that immediate connection. And as one of the presentations earlier was talking about, once you learn one language, it's easier to pick up others. When you need someone immediately saying something in their native language, it means the world to them, because they are so much more likely to stop or say hello. So I will always make an effort with any mixed zone, and football and sport is a global approach anyway. So languages, they are a real string to your bow. The obvious ones are interviews. So the previous examples I've given are major tournaments. These athletes feel most comfortable in their native language. So this is Raphael Varane, former France, Manchester United, Real Madrid player. I had a great chat with him, an hour and a half, on all matters from defensive tactics to how he dealt with Eric Ten Hag at Manchester United, all in French. And he was just able to express himself more clearly. Once again, Wendy Renard, one of the most successful French women's players. So she's looking at a squad photo. She's the one at the back, the tallest. And then that's a screenshot of her looking at. She plays for Lyon. Once again, want to do the interview in French. They're more at ease. One funny story about Wendy Renard, actually, is that she's from Martinique, and her family came over to watch her at Euro 2022, and they had an Airbnb in Doncaster. So I was in a family room with her auntie, uncle, cousins, mum, French, zipping round the room. And once again, it just adds that level of depth and layers to an interview, which really brings it to life for the reader. These ones are pieces that I have done for The Athletic, and it's about being brave and curious to go and explore different cultures and different languages that you might not be familiar with. Alexia Putellas, Barcelona captain, two-time Ballon d'Or winner. I rocked up to her primary school in Barcelona and my very broken Spanish, and asked her to speak to her primary school teacher. And Merce Esteban invited me in, and was, of course, so proud to speak about Alexia. For her, she was just this little girl running around playing football. But it was, I made the effort in a language that I didn't speak, and then I could conduct the interview in English. Ruben Amorim, when he was announced as Manchester United manager, we pride ourselves at The Athletic for being newsbreakers and go-getters, and we were pretty confident that once we'd broken the exclusive news that he was going to be announced as Manchester United manager, on the Monday evening I got a phone call saying, "Can you fly to Lisbon tomorrow?" I was thinking, right, Portuguese is not on my list. But again, I think it's having the know-how of how to connect with people, and how, even if you don't speak a language, you can find a way. A little hello, how are you, and thank you gets you a long way in a different language. And I spoke to his friends and family, and I'd found out that his dad had a key shop, and there was all matters of keys, safes, dog tags, car keys, door keys, the whole lot. And I thought, wow, I have no idea how I'm going to ask this man any questions because he doesn't speak English and I don't speak Portuguese. And I think these are just little know-hows that you develop. So I went to a Portuguese person and said, look, would I be able to record you speaking Portuguese so I could communicate with him? And in the end, we were able to work it out. But he unfolded, okay, I couldn't speak fluent Portuguese, but suddenly all these pictures came out of Ruben Amorim and how his story developed. And I just don't, it just wouldn't have ever have happened if I wasn't inquisitive enough to say, okay, I don't speak the language, but I'm going to give it a go. And I think a lot of pupils and kids these days, it's intimidating, it's quite scary, and having that confidence, hopefully they will be able to go and use this as an example of how you can use your languages. I also think that teaching made me ask the best questions because your kids are inquisitive and they ask really, really good questions. But also when you're assessing for learning, you are trying to understand what is going on in their brain. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with an athlete. And I think that skill of asking questions and follow-ups as well came from my teaching. So kind of a mishmash of language learning and teaching. And then studying a degree in modern languages, you have to be very analytical, whether that's a poem, for example, or you're actually arguing and broader themes, and even sifting through primary sources, secondary sources. Those are skills that I still use today. And I think in a world of, when artificial intelligence is coming in, I think even an authentic human voice is still so important, because my job is actually to go to the primary source, go and find out information, go and call people, speak to them in person. And that reliable information is still so apparent today. So in summary, my languages have opened doors, and employers look, especially in my industry, as soon as you've got a language on your CV, they're impressed. They want you because it's such a rare skill to have. And whether it's in journalism or marketing or commercial or being an agent in the world of sport, it really is invaluable. And I hope that you can communicate to your students that there is an avenue there if they wish to pursue it. I think we have got time for some questions, and I'm very willing to be on the other side of the fence this time. So yeah, please fire away.
You're obviously really approachable and great with people. Do you think you were always like that and therefore went the language's way, or did the language's way make you like that or more like that? How did you get into journalism, and did you have a very sporty background, and why that form of journalism, or could it have been politics or another form of journalism?
I think, Helen, you're probably best asking that. I think I was always quite an outgoing person and had that confidence. But I definitely think languages really accelerated that, because I'm quite awkward now when I try and speak new languages because I'm so worried of making a mistake. Whereas as a kid, I just kind of chuck myself in, and if I made a mistake, then, it's not the end of the world. I also, and this is coming back to my teaching career, is that I was really, really lucky and really privileged that my school had exchanges. And that was a key for me, because I just thought, well, if I practice really hard at this, then I'm going to be able to speak to this person and I can find out this information. And so that is a really especially working at an academy when pupils don't have those opportunities. That's really hard. How did I get into sports journalism? When I was a teacher, I used to work at the local radio station at the weekends. I used my summer holidays to try and get as much experience as possible, whether that's BBC, The Times, The Telegraph. And then it's hard because no one will employ you unless you have experience. But how do you get experience in that kind of catch-22 situation? And honestly, that's why I went into teaching, because it was just such a nebulous career path. I had no idea how to get into it. Was there a third part of your
Why
question?
sports journalism?
Oh, why sports journalism? Yeah. I would always turn up to cheats with some kind of a sport kid on. I just loved sport growing up, and I didn't write about it. I just played it. And I think I really am interested in what makes athletes tick. And I would watch, Gabby Logan, Claire Balding on the TV and go, oh, that looks quite a good job. Like I haven't gone into the broadcast presenting route. Commentary, I really enjoy. And learning languages just opens up your vocabulary so much, and the richness of a vocabulary. I think that really helped me in my commentary as well. And even structuring an essay, it sounds so simple, but it's what my job is today, is to write as well.
Well, thank you for that wonderful talk, and for showing so comprehensively that it's all literature. Don't you think you have a superpower? There's a potential superpower in the link between languages and sport, and that we have so many sports people, like some of those you mentioned, who come from elsewhere, who are managers, players. Yeah? Can't we put that together in some way?
If you want to go into business and do something, I'd be very happy to talk to you, because I think I used to be so impressed by footballers coming in. I think there's a Swiss player, and he would switch from French, German, English, Italian, with these questions being fired at him. And especially in our younger age groups, and among, going to be stereotypical, massive fan of women's football and women's sport, but boys, to have that hook of like Kylian Mbappe, be interviewing him, and he could switch between French, Spanish and English. And how you find a way to link how important those languages have been for those athletes. Because you'll have, among the squad, real issues at the start with a player who needs a translator, whose English isn't that good. And once you break that down, then their performances are so much better, because they feel part of the community and the team. And it's actually really interesting, the flip side of when English players go abroad, they actually really struggle because their language skills haven't been as developed.
There's a lot that could be done with that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. I thought that was really fascinating. I'm not sure if this question is going to make sense, but I'll try. When you were speaking, it made it feel like the world of sports journalism is almost like a microcosm of how languages are viewed within sports journalism in the UK. Is like a microcosm of how languages are viewed in the public in this country, which is that you've just given this amazing narrative of how languages have helped you in all these quite micro and macro ways. And yet, I mean, I'm not a sports fan in the way that you are, but I have to watch it sometimes because I have children. And to me, it's completely invisible that language skills are useful for a UK sports journalist. And it feels a bit like, we all know, because we're linguists, we all know what an amazing superpower it is, but it's almost like you only know if you know, and it's like a secret thing that we all kind of share, but we've not succeeded in getting the message across to the wider public that this superpower, like, really does all the things that you've just described. So I think my question is, do you have any insights into, what could happen within sports journalism that would make your amazing skill set more visible? Because I think if we could sort of think about that, then that might help us to think more broadly about how do we make these skills more visible to the public at large?
Really good question. I don't have the answer. Yeah, because I suppose if you read any of those articles, then you just think, well, yeah, it's all in English. The question, you don't even ask yourself how they got the information. You just think, well, they've done it somehow. I presume everyone speaks English because the article's written in English. How do you make it more visible?
What happens if you I mean, do you when you're doing broadcast journalism, does your foreign language speaking get cut out of the final edit, for example? Like, just thinking quite specifically now.
Yeah, usually because I'm only written, they will only clip up the press conferences. But any media outlet will always either dub it and have the English translation. There are these clips that are quite popular on social media, and I'm going to do her such a disservice, but there's a brilliant interviewer who I will find it and share it with Nicola, who asked the question in Spanish. The player replies in Spanish and she translates straight away, and that dexterity is so impressive that catches people's eyes. So that is one way of, I suppose, celebrating the skill and not cutting it out so it seems seamless, but exposing the machinations of the interview. I will think and work on it.
Thanks. No, I think, it'd be great to continue the conversation, because I do really think there's something in it. I think it's really, really, really interesting what you've identified there. So thanks ever so much.
Yep. Last one. Did you want to ask last one?
Maybe one of the ideas could be like, could you come to our school? Or if not, could you maybe record a video? We were just saying, it'd be really nice if you recorded a video and because it's you're preaching to convert, we all believe what, but it's the kids need to hear it. And I feel if they heard your story, it'd be like, wow, that's so cool. A little video, or you could become a little social media follower or something.
I'm going to probably set myself up to disappoint a lot of people, but I know this is being videoed, so please use that resource. But I will leave my details. And as a former teacher, I'd love to come into schools. So if I can help, please let me know.
Okay, thank you so much to Charlotte.